The town of Pleasant Valley had always been shrouded in a veil of mystery. Tales of the Mothman, a winged creature with glowing red eyes, were whispered among the townsfolk. As an investigative journalist, I was naturally drawn to these stories, eager to uncover the truth behind the legend. I arrived in Pleasant Valley on a chilly October evening in 2006. The sun had just set, casting long shadows over the quaint town. The streets were eerily quiet, and the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. I checked into a small, run-down motel at the edge of town. The receptionist, an elderly woman with a wary look in her eyes, handed me my key and mumbled something about staying inside after dark. Ignoring her warning, I grabbed my camera and notepad and headed out to explore the town. My first stop was the old bridge where most sightings of the Mothman had been reported. The bridge loomed over the dark waters of the river, its rusted beams creaking in the wind. The place had an unsettling atmosphere, as if it held secrets from a time long past. I spent hours on the bridge, hoping to catch a glimpse of the elusive creature. The cold night air bit at my skin, but I remained vigilant. Just as I was about to give up, I heard a rustling sound in the trees behind me. I turned around, my heart pounding in my chest. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a dark figure darting between the trees. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself it was just a deer or a large bird, but deep down I knew it was something more. Determined to capture evidence, I followed the figure into the woods. The trees closed in around me, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out to grab me. The further I went, the darker it became. My flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced on the forest floor. I felt like I was being watched, every nerve in my body on high alert. I stopped to catch my breath, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. That's when I heard it, a low humming noise like the beating of giant wings. I looked up, and there it was, the Mothman. Its eyes glowed a menacing red, piercing through the darkness. Its wings spread wide, casting an ominous shadow over the forest floor. Panic surged through me. I snapped a photo, the flash illuminating the creature for a brief second. It let out a shrill screech, a sound that echoed through the woods and sent shivers down my spine. I turned and ran, branches whipping against my face, my heart pounding in my ears. The forest seemed to come alive, the trees closing in around me as if trying to trap me. I burst out of the woods and onto the bridge, gasping for breath. The Mothman was nowhere to be seen. I looked at the photo I had taken. It was blurry, but the outline of the creature was unmistakable. I had my proof. Back at the motel, I tried to sleep, but my mind raced with the events of the night. Every creak of the old building made me jump. Every shadow seemed to hide the Mothman. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. When morning finally came, I packed my things and left Pleasant Valley, vowing never to return. Years later, I still can't shake the feeling that the Mothman is out there watching, waiting. And whenever I close my eyes, I see those glowing red eyes staring back at me. The experience left me haunted, a constant reminder that some legends are best left undisturbed. I never believed in the supernatural, but that all changed one fateful autumn night in 2007. I had always been a skeptic, dismissing the tales of the Mothman as mere folklore. That was until I found myself on the outskirts of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, chasing a story that would change my life forever. I had been driving for hours, the dense forest pressing in on either side of the narrow road. The sky was overcast, a heavy blanket of clouds obscuring the moon. My car's headlights cut through their darkness, illuminating the way ahead. Suddenly, a figure darted across the road. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding. There it was, standing in the middle of the road, the Mothman, its wings spread wide, eyes glowing an eerie red. I fumbled for my camera, but by the time I raised it, the creature had vanished into the woods. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I pulled over and grabbed my flashlight. The air was thick with tension as I ventured into the forest, my breath visible in the cold night air. The only sounds were the crunching of leaves underfoot and the distant hoot of an owl. As I moved deeper into the woods, I found myself at the edge of an old, abandoned factory. The windows were broken, and the building seemed to have been forgotten by time. A shiver ran down my spine as I approached. I had heard stories about this place, about strange sightings and unexplainable events. I entered the factory, the air thick with dust and the scent of rusted metal. My flashlight's beam cut it through the darkness, revealing old machinery and scattered debris. As I explored, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every creak of the building, every shadow seemed to hide some unseen presence. Suddenly I heard a noise, a faint rustling sound coming from the upper level. I cautiously made my way up the rickety staircase, each step echoing through the empty factory. When I reached the top, I saw it again. The Mothman. It was perched on a beam, its red eyes fixed on me. My heart raced, fear and curiosity battling within me. I raised my camera and took a photo. The flash startled the creature, and it let out a chilling screech before spreading its wings and taking flight. I followed it through the factory, my flashlight barely keeping up with its rapid movements. The creature led me to the roof, where it finally stopped, staring at me with those piercing red eyes. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I was on the brink of uncovering something extraordinary, yet I was terrified of what that might mean. The Mothman began to make a low humming noise, and I realized it wasn't threatening me. It was trying to communicate. Suddenly, a vision flashed before my eyes. I saw the town of Point Pleasant, but it was different. Buildings were crumbling, and people were fleeing in panic. The bridge that connected the town to the rest of the world was collapsing, sending cars and people plunging into the river below. The vision was so vivid, so real, that it took my breath away. Just as quickly as it had come, the vision disappeared. The Mothman let out one final screech before flying off into the night. I stood there, shaken to my core. What I had seen felt like a warning, a glimpse into a possible future. I left the factory and returned to my car, my mind racing. I had come to Point Pleasant to debunk a myth, but instead, I had encountered something far beyond my understanding. The Mothman wasn't just a creature of legend, it was a harbinger, a warning of impending disaster. The next morning, I reported what I had seen to the authorities. They were skeptical, of course, but a few days later, the Silver Bridge collapsed, just as I had seen in my vision. The tragedy claimed many lives, and the town of Point Pleasant was forever changed. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. But one thing is certain, the Mothman is real, and its warnings should never be ignored. Whenever I hear stories of strange sightings or unexplainable events, I think back to that night in Conmont and the creature that changed my life forever.